I'm Kenton Claremont, and you're listening to the Train to Hunt podcast. Dude, there he is. He's coming in. Get ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Train to Hunt podcast. Today, I'm super excited about the guest we have on. I met him last year at the Sheep Show. We're actually at the Sheep Show right now, and from the very start, I was super intrigued by that there was another human being out there like this guy. Most of you have heard of the Cameron Haynes, and as much respect as I have for a guy like that, I found out that there's even nuttier people out there in the hunting world than him. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Greg McHale. Greg, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I guess that's quite an introduction to be put in that light. So yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You bet. Well, hey, let's just jump right into it. And I know a little bit about you. I've had the pleasure of being able to sit down and talk with you about a little bit of your past and where you're from. But our audience, man, they probably haven't ever heard your name spoken. So give us the elevator version of who you are, where you're from, and what makes you tick.
Yeah, really, I'm just a guy from the Yukon, living, certainly not living in the thick of it, that's for sure.
Right.
But we've, my wife and I moved there after university, and found home in the wilderness, and that's kind of where we've been ever since.
So university, where did you go?
I grew up in Ontario. Went to the University of Windsor. And yeah, I connected up with my wife there. We went to grade school together, actually, the two of us, and
really?
We went to separate high schools, and yeah, we got back together at university, and yeah, it's been tremendous ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you guys meet, like on the top of a mountain somewhere running next to each other or something?
No, it's not quite that romantic, actually. It's no, but we went to, like I said, we went to grade 1 together all the way through grade 8, and we were in a really small school with like 70 kids, and so we knew each other extremely well, and then we had separate high schools, and then university, we actually, I was playing for the hockey team, and she had heard that I was there, and I had heard that she was there, and we just kind of moved through a mutual friend, got together, and it's been a journey ever since.
Yeah, and you admittedly married up, right? Like this, she's a stud. Like Greg's a stud, you guys, but he will tell you, without a doubt, he takes second chair to his wife. She's a stud too.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I married up in so many ways, not just athletically.
Don't we all?
But yeah, and I think that's a big part of who I am and who she is. We just get to spend so much time, or have over the years spent so much time in athletics together, and just pushing, and
yeah,
and it's just been in a lifestyle. But she's an amazing runner.
Yeah.
She's not just an amazing runner. It's just she's an inspiration to me every time I go out. I kind of get choked up talking about it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean. I've definitely married up.
Good, man. That's good. That's good. You did a good job. So Ontario's a long way from Yukon. And before you even do that, you even go there, I want to know what you went to college for. Did you graduate? Did you get a degree? What was kind of your focus aside from hockey?
Yeah, so I originally went to college and took law and security. My father used to be a police officer, so it was kind of, the natural thing to kind of follow your father's footsteps. And then after college, I went to university. It's a little bit of a different system than you guys have, but so then I went to university after that, and I took criminology with the intention of coming out and being a police officer. So that was the game plan there. And so after I finished school, we moved to the Yukon, and I became a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Okay.
So I spent about 8 years with the RCMP, and it was so I I followed that. I followed my dad's lead, and then life throws you whatever it throws you, and you just jump on the advantages and or whatever comes along, and that's what I did. So I left the RCMP, which was a great career, but it just in the end I was just looking for a little bit more, so I left them and have been kind of just doing my thing since.
What is your thing now?
Well, I get asked that question. It's a little bit difficult because, my wife and I have a number of businesses, but really ultimately it was entrepreneurship that I left the RCMP and I left enforcement for.
Yeah.
So it's, I know, and as you get older, you start to know things about yourself, and I knew that I'm the kind of person that I don't take orders well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm, it's not that I don't take orders well, but I have to really respect the person that is providing me with direction.
Yeah.
And it has to be good direction. So, it was a natural thing for me to put that in my past and
become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and work for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you work for yourself, the only person you have to be mad at is you, right?
Yeah, when things go bad, there's only one person to blame.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you and your wife have multiple businesses, and I know that from conversations in the past, you've said that you kind of cater to some of the tourism in that area. Is it the boat tourism?
Yeah. Our main business is called Caribou Crossing Trading Posts, and what we do is we have a wildlife museum.
Okay.
It's really down right up our alley, hey. So, we have a wildlife museum, and we basically cater to the cruise ship traffic.
Sure.
And it's a great summertime business and provides us an opportunity to be out in the wintertime to do some traveling and and get down south to beautiful places like Reno and get out of the snow for a little bit.
Yeah, so right. You guys are probably buried in snow up there right now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's definitely had a few cold snaps and got a bit of snow going on now.
So, at what point did you decide, you know what, I'm gonna start doing some adventure racing? Because I know that you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Denise and I we actually, we started out watching the Eco Challenge, and this is after we moved to the Yukon. And really, in my opinion, there's no better place in the world to train for multi-sport like that style of racing than a place like the Yukon. Sure. People would say, I shouldn't say that. There is one better place, and it's New Zealand.
Okay. But short of New Zealand.
Yeah. I think that, the Yukon provides different opportunities or different ways to toughen a person up for a sport like that even New Zealand doesn't have. New Zealand has this temperate climate that, you can get out and paddle all year round, and obviously the Yukon doesn't have that, but you make do and you do your paddling indoors and you get out and run at -40, and those are the kind of things that people from New Zealand can't do.
Yeah.
So,
man, I think you got to be a certain degree of tough just to live in the Yukon. Let alone train up there, right? Like, I imagine that most people that live up in that area, they're not pouring in from San Francisco or LA or Tucson, Arizona into Yukon.
Yeah. No, that's I don't know how tough you have to be, but maybe you just have to be not very smart. I'm not sure.
Okay, so you guys, you're watching these adventure races and just decide, you know what, we can do this.
Yeah, it's exactly how it worked out. Is we talked about it, but the sport is it's very gear intensive, and it's not a cheap sport to get into. So we had an opportunity. There was a multi-day race, an expedition style race that came to the Yukon, because the venue is just amazing.
Yeah.
And the city of Whitehorse actually called me up and asked me if I'd put a team in, because they're trying to find, a few Yukon teams versus all international. So I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll jump on it. And they kind of helped us get into the sport.
Oh, right.
And ever since that first race, which was, I don't know, maybe 400 miles, the first one, On day 4, I remember, Denise and I are trekking across this mountain plateau, and the race is coming to an end, like 40 kilometers or so left. So it's, it's in the bag. And I remember, the sun just coming up, and I'm saying, Denise, remind me never to do this again. And she looked at me and said, oh, don't worry about it. We're not doing this again. And 2 weeks later, we'd already signed up for another one.
Yeah. No way.
So there was just something about that sport, something about what you take away from it, that everyday life or, anything else I've ever experienced in life just cannot come close to.
Right.
So it's just been such a great experience.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you go on a hunt, right? Really, really tough hunt, or anything you do that has any amount of struggle, physical struggle, mental struggle. The whole time especially when you're coming to the end of it, you're thinking, there's no way I'll ever do this again. But you don't get very far separated, and you realize how much it taught you and how much you learned from it, and you can't wait to do it again.
I do think that it's probably a certain type of personality that understands or feels that way, like what you just described.
Yep.
Clearly you're the personality that is something that drives you, and that once you experience that, you want it again.
Right.
By what you just said means to me that you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there are that many people out there that get to that point in their life where they even or feel that or experience that, and maybe it is just a personality trait. I don't know.
I think it's something that can be learned, though, as far as just overcoming this huge mental battle and winning, essentially, achieving it. And at that time, like you guys just talked about, it's like, man, I don't know, that was really tough, but soon it wears off, and then you're seeking it out, and you're looking for the next bout of suffering, I guess. Really, I mean, you're looking for the next challenge, the next event that's going to push you to have to just be tough and overcome.
I think that the key is just pushing yourself to the places that you didn't think you could go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then once you get there, having the mindset to push a little further.
Right.
To realize that there really isn't anything you can't do. If you want to do it, just do it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I think fear has a lot to do with it too. I think people are, I don't know what the fear, what they're afraid of to take on a challenge like that, but I think fear has a lot to do with it, that keeps people from testing themselves or going on some sort of a big adventure that they know they're going to be uncomfortable, and I think that keeps people from doing it.
Yeah, it's a fear of failure.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that you do, like for me, I don't like to go into any race and lose.
Yeah.
But what I've, and as I grow and I learn more about myself, and it's all self-talk too. Like
sure.
You have to do so much self-talk. It's really the fear of failure that holds people back from achieving greatness.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't fail, you can't achieve greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Name one person that is great at what they did that never had a failure in their life.
Right.
Like, it's about picking up after those failures. That's the defining moment of that people can tell who you are, or you can tell, inside yourself, that those are defining moments that if you get up when you don't want to, those are the points in your life that nobody can ever take away.
That's
mm-hmm.
right. Yeah, I think that's why we seek it, Greg. I think that's why we seek those moments of those exact intersections. We look for those intersections, and those intersections aren't found in easy spots. I mean, you have to look and look and look, and sometimes you feel like, oh, it should be right around here somewhere. Like I'm approaching this spot of failure, and then you go even further, and then suddenly it's there. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? I mean, like,
yeah.
Even if it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is, for instance, when Ryan and I did our sheep hunt this year, we wanted it to be hard, and we kind of were looking at it to be hard, but we almost had this design of what hard was going to look like, and we got taken way beyond even that. Like, we thought, okay, if we do this many miles, and man, we'll just pack up and move out of here, and we'll do this long trek at this time. And about the time we got to the point where we almost surrendered to the suck and went, it's just, we're kind of beyond what we thought we could even do. And that's when things just kind of unfolded.
Yeah.
So it's almost something that you can't even go looking after. You just have to just be brave enough to continue until it finds you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you don't put 2 rams on the ground on the 11th hour and not have pushed to the end.
Yeah. Right.
I know the story. We've talked about it, and it's an awesome story. And seeing the pictures of you two with your rams, and literally kind of like the last days of this hunt, and not seeing a lot, and that's demoralizing when you're out there and you're not seeing what you expect to see.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping on and keeping pushing and going beyond, just saying we're going to do this to the bitter end, and we're not going to sleep in until 8:30 in the morning every day, or we're going to get up and we're going to move, and it's going to be what it's going to be, but it's not going to be because we quit.
That's right. And that's exactly what our attitude was. We're going to push this thing to the very bitter end. If we ended up walking out of here with nothing, it's not going to be because we quit.
That's right.
And lo and behold, that last day we ended up getting it.
The pot of gold.
Yeah. So, I don't know how we ended up doing quite a trek, but it was no 400-mile race. Obviously we trekked hard. I'm really fascinated, and I think our listeners will be too, just the whole mindset and lifestyle of adventure racing, because you and your wife got to the national level. Like, you guys were competing in like world championships of is it ultra adventure racing? Is that what it's called?
Just adventure race.
Adventure racing.
So the world championships is an expedition style race, which kind of means that 400 kilometers plus.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our sweet spot, and those long, grinded out style races.
So tell me what it's like to be, and it's a team. How many people on a team?
So typically there's 4 people on the team, and one person has to be, typically it's, one female on each team. 1 female,
3 males, and typically 400 kilometers. And
400 plus.
400 plus. And I know you're biking.
It's mountain biking, paddling, typically kayak or canoe, and then trekking, running.
Yep.
Usually, there's some rope work in there, like rappels and ascents and stuff. So it really depends on the location where the race is. Like the European races, they like to throw in some different stuff. Inline skating, which is just to mess people up.
Yeah.
Like the Kiwis, none of those guys inline skate, and they get on them. But they do kind of throw a few of those things in there. But the main part of the race is, are those 3 disciplines:
biking, paddling, and running, basically, or hiking.
Are there mandatory checkpoints, Greg, when you're?
It's all navigation by map and compass.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's all cross country. Like, obviously, you connect up roads and here and there, but they basically give you checkpoints that you have to hit. Like, say they point, going that direction for 100 miles, or whatever, 50 miles, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's going to be a checkpoint, so you hit it. So you can route find, and there's just a lot of mental game to it as well, beyond the suffering mental game, but just really, figure out best routes and, which side of the valley to go up and which side of the valley not to, depending on the sun, depending on how much, southern exposure, and all of these things come into play when you get at that level.
Right.
And so so it doesn't sound like there is a predetermined trail. There's a predetermined route. You might find yourself completely alone pretty quickly into the race if you picked a route that nobody else picked.
Oh yeah. Like we spend, pretty much the majority of the races, you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the top 5 teams, we're all within striking distance of each other.
Yeah.
Really. It's just a matter of one mistake or one, but everybody's taking their own routes, and sure, you find yourselves together at certain points and pushing each other and stuff. But for the most part, you're out there doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's that world like as far as like getting close when you're close to another team? Is there camaraderie, or is there a little bit of a lot more competition mindset? Like let's get ahead of these guys, or is it a little bit of both, or what's that like?
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Like we're all out there to win.
Yeah.
But we're not out there to be rude to each other.
So,
right?
like, if somebody were short on supplies, or like something happened, and they were really in dire need of something, like one team would go, "Here, we have an extra oar or whatever."
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
It's one, like, the last thing I want to do is win because of some technicality that that somebody broke a paddle.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's part of the game, and if you're out there by yourself and you bust a paddle, well, guess what? You're using one blade.
Right.
But if you had an extra paddle and somebody, you would give it to them, because
Gotcha.
that's not the way you want to win.
Right. And I know we talked about this last year, and you were saying how important the navigation piece is, because with the Train Hunt Challenge, and a couple of years ago, we were able to integrate the navigation piece and how to read, your GPS and give them some waypoints to hit. And I think that part is kind of a lost art in the hunting world just in general. And you were saying how big a piece that is in adventure racing, because if you take the wrong bearing for a half hour, you might lose 2 or 3 places. You were saying.
Yeah, for sure. Like, navigation is such a huge factor. In the early days of the sport, I would say that it wasn't so much, but well, I mean, that's not even fair to say either. But now that the teams are so fit and so strong, and one small slip, one navigation error that can put you behind. Yeah, 4 places sometimes would be a nice thing.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's unbelievable, man. And on that note, you say that, like, what top 5 teams in the world, they're all super tight. Like, they're going to be finishing a 400-kilometer race within, minutes of each other?
Well, you wouldn't find it. It'd be hours for sure.
But, I mean, that's a 400-kilometer race. What do you think all of these people, let's just narrow it down to your team. What did all your teammates have in common? What's it take to become an adventure racer besides just amazing amounts of endurance and mental toughness, and then obviously some?
Well, I guess it depends on the level, right?
Yeah.
Like for our team, everybody would, if they chose probably an individual sport, would have been pretty world class.
Okay.
Like pretty right up there as in individual sports, maybe not top 10 in anything, but your typical adventure racer, like for me, I'm definitely well-rounded, and that's why adventure racing made really good sense to me.
Sure.
Is because I can hold my own in anything, and I wouldn't say that I'm a rock star at any one of them. So yeah, adventure racing, you just can't have a weak at that level. You can't have a weakness.
Right.
You can't be a terrible paddling team, even though North Americans typically are not good paddling teams in comparison to to the Kiwis or the Aussies maybe.
Yeah.
Just because we can't get on the water all year. So if there's a weakness in North America, that's typically where it is. But in the last number of years, I think that we've, we really have changed that a bit and started making paddling a more of a priority, and it certainly has helped.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into the hunting side, obviously.
I want to ask one more question.
But I have another question before we get into the hunting side.
One more question on the adventure racing, Greg. First question is: are there mandatory rests during these adventure races? Or is it here's your start, here's your finish?
Yeah,
go.
It's typically here's your start, here's your finish.
These are the things you must do between. You must bike, you must paddle here.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have specified transition areas where you go from biking to paddling, and you dump your bike, and you literally typically have to sometimes take it apart and put it in a box, and so that they can transport it to the next transition area, because you might bike 5-6 times in a race, you might kayak 4-5 times in a race, right?
Yep.
And then so they have to move your gear for you, and you want to protect your gear.
Yep.
So you you always, pull your bike apart, literally wheels, pedals, thing comes off, you put it in your bike, and this is all time. Like, this is all part of the game.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you can't, once that clock starts, it doesn't stop.
Yep.
And there's, there's typically no mandatory timeouts.
How tough is disassembling or reassembling a bike when you haven't slept for 24, 36 hours? How tough is that?
Oh yeah, like the the thing is, you don't even know how tough it is sometimes, because I know I've seen photos of myself or video of myself sitting in front of, typically I'm build Denise's and my bike, and she takes care of me with food or whatever while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But sitting in front of a bike with a wrench in my hand and just looking at a seat post, knowing that this seat post needs to go up because you had to drop it to get it in the box, and probably just blowing through 3, 4, 5 minutes just looking at this thing because you're completely zoned out.
Yeah.
And then somebody throws a banana at you, or a gel, and and then you wake back up again, and then you get after it.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's that's definitely a big part of that challenge, is just being able to deal with sleep deprivation.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was going to be my last question about it, was to just, if you could just walk us through a typical race. Like, how long do you go before you sleep? How long does a 400-kilometer race normally take? What do you do when somebody's tanking? Just kind of walk us through that a little bit.
So typically, a 400, our team somewhere in the ballpark on, if you average it out over whatever country, over whatever terrain, it's about 125 kilometers a day we cover.
Okay.
And the average amount of sleep, we don't sleep for, say the race starts in the morning. Sometimes race organizers definitely throw you a curveball, and they give you the maps at 10 o'clock at night before the race starts. So you're hours over pouring, route finding and going over these maps, and cutting the maps up and route finding and plotting points. So you can could spend 6-8 hours, and you don't get to you get an hour of sleep. You get 2 hours of sleep before this race starts at 8 a.m.
Jeez.
So you're already walking into it sleep deprived. Mm-hmm. And then typically we race for the first 36 hours, and we don't sleep during the day ever. So we only ever sleep at night, and we typically try to sleep at those wee hours of the morning, 2 to 4 in there, where you really is, a pretty low, like your body wants to be sleeping at that time. Right. And those, you can't break that rhythm of what the sleep cycle is.
Yep.
So yeah, we usually sleep at those hours of the day, and typically anywhere from 15 minutes, depending on how much pressure is on, and to an hour and a half. And then we do that same sleep every 24 hours.
So you'll get 15 to 90 minutes every 24 hours.
Yeah.
And you go 36 hours. That's usually your first rest, and then 24 hours you might get 15 minutes. Go the next day.
Yeah.
So tell me what the mind starts doing when you're that sleep deprived. Hallucinations, right? I'm sure you've had some hallucinations.
Yeah, I've definitely had some hallucinations. Probably the most interesting one to me that I can describe was, I was doing a solo race up in the Yukon called the Yukon Arctic Ultra, and it's 700-kilometer running race in February, and you're pulling a sled, like a polk, with all your gear in it, and it's unsupported. So I was about day 4 into this race, and I was pretty on point. Things were going good. It was it was cold. It was minus 36 to 40ish.
Yeah, pretty cold.
But
pretty cold.
Freaking maniac.
But I was coming into this checkpoint, and the sun was just breaking, and which it breaks in the Yukon at about 11 o'clock in the morning. Right. For about 4 hours at that time of year, 5 hours. Mm-hmm. But so the sun was just coming, almost starting to come up, and I see this guy on the side of the trail. And as I run up to it, and it's a guy, and he's wearing a cowboy hat, and I run up to him, and immediately, as soon as I get beside him, he turned into a bat and flew away. Okay, so I know this sounds completely ridiculous.
No.
And it was so ridiculous that I actually kind of snapped out of it, and I started laughing to myself. And I said, holy, and I'm talking to myself now, right?
Yeah, right.
So I said, holy dude, you are so out of it right now.
Yeah.
But that's what it took to get me, to get me back into race mode again. And I don't know how many hours I've been kind of out of race mode because I wasn't really running at that point.
Yeah.
And then I started running again. So it took that, I don't know, mental flip or whatever just went in my head, and then I got back into race mode, and I was really good for basically the rest of the event.
That's wild. You're out on your feet. That's wild.
Yeah, that's
700 kilometers, you said?
Yeah.
On your feet, pulling a sled.
Yeah.
Did you win it?
Yeah.
You won that race? Is that the same one that you were saying that you went, like, you were supposed to hit a checkpoint, and if there would have been 2 or 3 guys like in the world there, someone could have died because that checkpoint was closed?
Yeah, it was like 70 kilometers from the finish, and it got really cold. Really cold. It's got like minus 45, and I was up in, by myself, but I'm up in this, kind of high, mountain, old burn area, and it was at those temperatures. There is no wind typically.
Yeah.
Like it was bitter cold, and I could see down the valley, 5 kilometers away, where there was supposed to be a checkpoint, and I didn't see any smoke. So I'm going, well, this is a little bit odd, but I know it's, maybe they don't have a fire on, which would make no sense. But
right, minus 40.
But I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. So as I get down there, it's not looking good. I'm not seeing smoke. So I get down to where the checkpoint is supposed to be, and I've got my map and compass out, and I know it's supposed to be here because it's at a river confluence of this trail, and this is a no-brainer because there's no more trails out there. Like,
right,
this is it.
Yeah.
So I realized it wasn't there. I didn't waste any time because there's no point, so I just kept on moving. But I had my race dialed in to, I would stop there, I would heat water, and I would melt water or snow for water, and I would sleep maybe 3 to 6 hours at that point in the race, and then continue on. But not having that there, I didn't have those options, and that was a huge section of just nothing, of just nobody. And the trail was starting to get blown in, and I had snowshoes out, and it was pretty tough time.
So you're expecting to come into this checkpoint probably and get refit.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna get more food. I'm gonna get some more supplies,
like
and
hot
then
water.
Hot water,
the main thing.
and finish.
Yeah.
And then push to the finish.
Get hot water, because as soon as you stop and have to melt snow at those temperatures, you've just lost 2 hours to fill 3 liters of water up, especially sleep deprived and at the stage where you're at that late in a race.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really anticipating that being there, and it wasn't there, and the guys, they just couldn't get in because it was too cold. Their snow machines wouldn't start, and they just couldn't get in.
So did you just push to the finish?
No, well, yes, but I ended up just going down the trail for maybe only a couple hours later, and I knew that I had to melt water because I'd been out.
Yeah.
And so I jumped in my sleeping bag, and I was going to melt water while laying in my sleeping bag, melt snow. And as I turned my stove on, and it being an ibupropanol, like butane stove, it froze up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, I'm going to put this thing. So I put it in my sleeping bag to warm the liquid up. And what I didn't do was, because it wouldn't start, what I didn't do is I didn't shut it off. So I'm now laying in the middle of the trail on top of my sled in my sleeping bag. I didn't shut it off, and I wake up, and it's because it warmed up, and now it's starting. It's filling my sleeping bag full of
fumes.
And I've got like a quarter-size hole that I'm looking out of because it's cold.
It's below zero. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to tear out of the sleeping bag, and so I thought, oh, okay, well, at least I can melt some snow now.
Right.
So I put it outside again and light it up, and literally 5 to 10 seconds later, it's frozen again. So now I know I have no choice. It's pack up, get on the move again, because, well, the only other option is not really good.
Yeah, right. Just sit there.
It's freeze. It's freeze to death.
Yeah. Right.
So that's where I was getting at. If there had been, say that, I don't know, top 3 to 5 guys in the world doing that race at that time, somebody would lose limbs.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that, and it would have been lucky if somebody just lost limbs at that point in the
just
race.
because people are competitive. Guys get competitive, and they're like, I'd rather lose my limb than lose.
Or once, like the way the race was laid out and that checkpoint not being there, it's not so much the competitiveness, it's that checkpoint was not there.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And when you're riding that fine line of weight and and food and water, and you run out of those things at those temperatures, and you have another 100 kilometers to go, and nobody's coming. It's up to you.
It's like basically you're like out. And I'm okay because I know I'm going to get this resupply. But you're pushing that resupply as far as you can. You get there running on fumes.
Exactly.
And then nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, someone's going to get something bad's going to happen in those circumstances.
That's how I organized the whole event, was light and fast, and I knew what I needed for length of time.
Yep.
Right. Almost to the hour.
Yeah.
And then obviously, there's a safety factor that you throw a little bit more, but you can't throw more liquid into a back of a sled.
Nope.
Like, you're carrying this liquid on your body, like next to your skin,
so you can keep it unfrozen.
Yeah. Right. Otherwise, you will have none.
Yeah.
So that's so wild, man. So let's transition to hunting and how, like, obviously it sounds like it's an easy transition from adventure racing to hunting. And let's just get a little bit about your background on hunting first. Just like, have you always been a hunter? Is this something you've always done your whole life?
Yeah, I've, my dad, it's like I shouldn't say everybody, but you grew up in the outdoors, and my father was, huge into fishing and hunting, and he started, I remember being able to skip school at, 6, 7, 8 years old to go, fishing with my dad.
Yeah.
Like, those are experiences that he just thought, you know what, school is great and all, but Greg, you're coming fishing because because you're going to learn whatever, you're going to man up out there, and you're going to suffer a little bit, whatever's going to happen. And so that's where it all started. And, I spent a lot of time hunting and fishing with my dad. And I have to say, this one is like, my dad, I just took him 2 years ago on his first doll sheep hunt, and he killed a 10-year-old great ram at 70 years old.
Oh,
so,
wow!
I mean, and this, he doesn't grow up in the mountains, but it was a great experience. But so I guess that's where it all started, is just family time and being in the woods.
Yeah, we Ryan and I can totally relate to that. It's just something that was always been there, right? It's just always been. And really for us, it was kind of the only real dad time we got. Yeah. Because Dad was always working so hard, and when it come hunting season, it was like finally time to just go out and hang out with Dad and get some quality time with Dad. And it was almost always in the woods, almost always.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it sounds like you had very similar upbringing. So transition us from growing up doing some fishing and having an outdoors dad who just like kind of taught you the ins and outs and love of the outdoors to where you're at now, because you're a long way from that too. I mean, you tell us a little bit about where you stand now. I mean, in the Yukon.
Yeah. Well, after university, Denise and I, we packed her Sundance up full of all kinds of, all our life's possessions, which consisted of backpacks and tents and, and a kayak and a canoe on top of her Sundance. And we took the 6,000 kilometer journey to the Yukon.
So you had two people's life possessions in a car.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And you couldn't get any further away in the same country from home than where we live right now. And it's certainly not because I wanted to get away from family, but it's because of the lure of the Yukon. Mm-hmm. It's a special place. It's probably very similar to Alaska. Once it gets in your bones, or it's, if you love the mountains, it's so tough to ever want to walk away from.
Right.
And so after we moved out there, it was kind of like, yeah, this is the kind of place we need to make home.
Yeah.
And one of my first jobs that I ever got was with Arctic Red River Outfitters. And
really?
I started, this is trial by fire, man. This is, kid from farm country thrown into the mountains, 400 miles north of Whitehorse or north of anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're there for three months. And I started out as a packer, and I worked with some, amazing people. So some of the most notable guys in the hunting industry, like Alex Van Bibber, who has passed away, and he's just a legend. And I was able to spend time in a hunt camp with men like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty lucky and I feel very fortunate to have been able to, kind of cut my teeth in that kind of country and with those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you do that, Greg?
I did that for that one summer, and then I've guided, in other places since then.
Yeah.
But it was certainly that, and learning, not just learning anything, but it was about learning sheep hunting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I, for the 20-some years, the sheep hunting has been just, and once you start sheep hunting, well, you guys know.
It's in your blood, yeah.
It's very similar. I think it's comparable to going to the Yukon or Alaska for the first time as men. It's like, it's hunters. You only know what you know, and you don't even know what you're missing out on until you do it.
Yeah.
Like if you've never been to Alaska, fly into Alaska and do a drop hunt. You can't imagine what you're missing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like hunters that, if you've never been in pursuit of sheep where they live and been on a real sheep hunt, you don't know what you're missing. Yeah. But once you have been there, it's like you can't unring that bell. You're not unringing that bell.
I think it just challenges you in ways that, I don't know that any other hunt does.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like I can't speak educatedly to, what, the Western hunting down, for elk or whatnot. But I mean, it just, especially in those kind of wild places, mm-hmm. when literally there's nobody coming.
Right.
Like there's no road. If you have a sat phone, you want to call the cavalry. Well, guess what? It's a Super Cub, and it may be here this week.
Right.
And that's about what you're going to get.
And you're probably going to have to still move 10 miles so they can land and pick you up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So sheep hunting got in your blood early, but I know you hunt it all. You do it all, right? Like Yukon is a heavy tag environment. You get how many tags a year?
Yeah, I can walk over and get like 10 tags. Like I can get, I can get it all over the counter.
Yeah.
Sure, there are some special permit areas, but I mean, you don't need just a general tag. Anybody with some jam can harvest a ram.
Right.
Yeah. And every year.
Man, yeah. That's awesome.
So.
And when did you get your license, your pilot's license?
I've had it now for about 7 years.
7 years. And what was the inspiration behind that, other than, you know what, I'm tired of paying for flights. I'm just going to go ahead and get one myself.
You know what? I never paid for flights typically. Like where it all started was when I was 15. Mm-hmm. My dad asked me if I wanted to get my pilot's license, and I said yeah. he provided, the opportunity, and I took my ground school, and it just worked out that, flying is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I was playing competitive hockey, and it was cutting into time, and I probably wasn't focused enough to be able to get the education or the test writing skills, the book work behind it
at 15 Jeez.
to be able to pull it off. So I mean, it started early, but until I got to the Yukon and really saw and things laid out, and I never wanted to be able to have my license without owning an airplane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was, I had to put all my ducks in a row, and as I'm sure aviation isn't cheap, so I wasn't able to afford it until I could afford it. So
right.
But once I did, it's what, like, aviation is like sheep hunting. It gets in your blood. And you learn the machine, and especially with the Super Cub, you learn those kind of aircraft, and you jump into it, and it's part of your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you learn what it can do, it can take you to some pretty special places.
Oh, I can only imagine. Speaking of special places, let's talk about this last season. And there's some special things about this last season because of what you got going. I really would like you to talk a little bit more about what you got going, because the world, some of our listeners may not know who you are now, but I have a feeling that there's, after your project launches in July.
Yeah, July.
It's gonna be a big deal. So talk a little bit about Yukon Wild.
Yeah, so we have we've built. Yukon Wild is really about 3 guys. It's really about this team of guys that love to spend their time together in the mountains, and it's like the television program is what we're building, or what we've built, but it's a journey. Mm-hmm. The Yukon Wild is a program where I want to bring the most spectacular place that I know in the world into the homes of people that may never be able to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a hunting television program, but I believe that it's so much more than that. It's about teamwork, and it's about pushing yourself beyond where you thought you could push yourself. Mm-hmm. The premise of what we do is it's pretty much mostly human powered, with the exception of the aviation part, because there's nothing that I could never pull the aviation out of it, because I just love flying so much. But I guess I'm looking for that same thrill of adventure racing in a hunting forum, and it's been a culmination of my whole life. Yeah. has brought me to where we are right now with the Yukon Wild, and it's pretty special. I'm very proud to be able to spend the time that I do with the other 2 members of my team, Dave and Carl, and just being in the mountains and being in the beautiful places with buddies that you want to be there with.
Yeah.
Capturing it all on film, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. You're able to share that with everybody who, like you say, may never ever get a chance to see that part of the world, right? People only.
I think what we're trying to do is we are going to be, something different than I believe is something different than is out there in television right now. We kind of shoot all of our stuff in a cinematic format, and it's not about the kill. It's about the journey. It's about the adventure. It's if you're I don't want to turn anybody away from, but if it's programming and you need to see animals die, this is going to it's going to be maybe disappointing sometimes, because the real world doesn't allow for every time you go out hunting that you're successful.
Right.
And we want to portray in a lot of ways the real world. Now, mind you, having said that, we had an amazing season. So, I mean, I'm just trying to say that we believe that the viewer deserves more.
Yeah.
And I think we're ready for that, Greg.
And I think that we are. Like,
Yeah.
there are programs out there that, you know, like Jim Shockey's, the Uncharted, it takes on a bit of a different, it's certainly, we're not, that kind of, Jim is different, but he's certainly taken away that the Uncharted took me away from what I perceived normal hunting viewing to be. And I think, unfortunately, I think that, or I've heard that possibly this is the last year of it, but nonetheless, we are going to provide the viewer with something different.
Yeah. And I think that we're ready for that. I know that for many of the people that I hang out with, in myself for sure, I stopped watching hunting shows for a while because they just seemed like it was a cookie cutter. I mean, you could have little cinematography. There was a few shows that had some decent videography and cinematography and told some good stories, but for the most part, you knew it was going to be kind of this build up and then the kill and then a big thank you scene at the end, and that's it, And I think the world's ready for a show like yours that you're describing, which is one that isn't, the focus point isn't around the actual killing of the animal. It's about the journey and the adventure. And like you say, the Yukon.
You don't know. I can't probably tell you how many times people have said, "Oh, what do you mean? Like, you have to show this? Like, you could actually produce something and there wasn't a kill shot?
Yeah.
Or there wasn't, a kill shot in every episode. Don't get me wrong. Like,
you're getting some kill shots.
No, like 95% does have it, but unfortunately, in some ways, we're leaving gold on the cutting room floor to show it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I bet. I've just seen the trailer and like, for those of you out there, I know I've said this before, but I met Greg last year and during the sheep show, the pack race, and I looked up his trailer, and I think all you had last year was a trailer, right? And you were just kind of showing people that. And if where can they find the trailer at? Right.
Yeah, you can find. Well, actually, it's still the old trailers on our website. We have updated that since, but yeah, we're going to start the launch, the social media and leading up to our season here when in July. So it's we'll kind of keep you posted as to what we're going to be able to show you here in the immediate future.
Well, let's talk about all the places they can find the Yukon Wild: Instagram, Facebook. What's your website? Is it yukonwild.com?
Yes, it is. It's theyukonwild.com.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then talk about the show. When's that come out?
It comes out in July of this year on the Sportsman Channel.
Okay. Yeah. So July of this year on the Sportsman's Channel, you can find the Yukon Wild on Instagram, Facebook, and then there's a website.
Yep. And
you can kind of keep up with that project on there.
Yep.
That's amazing. So I think I probably already know the answer to this, but it's a question that I think that we're going to ask all of our guests, and that is, when you're looking at a hunt or you're planning a hunt, or if somebody was going to invite you on a hunt, what's the most important thing, aspect of the hunt that makes you decide like yes or no? Is it who you're hunting with, where you're hunting, what you're hunting, who, what, when, where? So who, what, when, where? What's the most important thing there?
The most important thing, without a doubt, is who I'm hunting with.
And explain. And I knew you were going to say that, but explain why. Because you're such a team guy.
I am. I'm all about the team. Yeah. Because it's I've spent my whole life playing team sports, and that's why it's so important to me as to who I'm hunting with. Like I would hunt sheep solo before I would hunt with somebody that is
going to whine and piss him on the whole time.
anybody that knows me knows that they don't not to even ask. So, but yeah, it's all about the guys you're hunting with and experiencing that. For me, the team and experiencing that with like-minded people and just pushing your limits together and pushing each other. And when somebody's down, picking them up. And, if I'm down and somebody else, all they have to say is, Greg, suck it up. Or, just to pull you out of your whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Out of your little pity party.
Yeah, it's really important to me to be out there with the guys that I want to be with. And not just guys, gals.
Yeah.
Like my wife is, she's taken 2 rams, and I love hunting with her, but we have 2 young kids, and it's unfortunately, we can't get out hunting together.
Right. How young are your kids?
Daughter Yari, she'll be 3 in March, and my son Coulter, he's 5.
Wow, so young kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to leave them at home with a bowl of Cheerios, and your mom and dad go hit the mountains.
Go sheep hunt.
It's a little bit tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. So what would you say the second thing is?
So the second most important thing is species.
Yeah. So what you're hunting?
It doesn't really matter because I'll hunt anything.
But what's your
the Yukon?
But what's your go-to? So if you got 2 invites from both good guys, you're like, yep, and one says sheep and one says
sheep all day.
Yeah,
no question.
Elk over anything.
Elk is a difficult one for us in the Yukon because it's tough to get permits. That's the one species that you have to draw for.
Have you ever hunted elk?
Yeah, I have. It's a bit of a tough story for me because I chased around an 8x9 bull for 3 weeks with my bow and didn't end up getting it. And it's a bit of a bad story as far as how it got taken. I had the only, let's just put it this way, I had the only permit in the zone, and I had 3 more weeks left, and that bull didn't make it to the end of the of the season.
Somebody poached him.
It wasn't poached. It was taken by it was taken legally, but
it was. I gotcha. It was pretty sore spot though.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was First Nation fella had taken it.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But it was a sore spot because I
for sure you've been chasing this thing around for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're like, I thought I was the only one with the permit.
Yeah.
Nope. Think again. So, you know what? I'm super stoked to get this out to our audience. I think that it's going to open people's eyes to what's possible. I know you certainly have for me as far as like the level of training, the level of conditioning, and the idea that a human can run 700 kilometers in negative 70 degrees and be
negative 30,
negative 40.
What did I say? Negative 70?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Negative 40 and do it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of taken my whole, like I said, what's possible to the next level. Before we jump off, there's a couple. One question I'd like to hear is the hunting story that you've told the most. Like, do you have the one hunting story you're like, man, I've told this one a ton because it really sticks out.
Yeah, I guess whenever the bear conversation comes up, right?
Oh yeah.
There's always that one. I was hunting solo for moose, and I was traveling down this game trail, and I was calling moose in the morning, and it was your typical September beautiful day, and I walk down this trail across this creek and then up the other side of the creek, and I got about maybe 15 yards down this moose trail, and I look over to my right, and there's this big mound. And if anybody knows anything about grizzly bears, it's something's dead, and they bury it, and they dig all around it, and on top of this mound was I could see hair sticking out, and I'm in great grizzly country, and I see this mound, and I go, uh-oh. So the hair stands up the back of your neck, and you go, this is not a good place to be. And so I stop, and I pull the bow out, and I see beyond this mound, and there's a grizzly bear, and he's laying down sleeping, and he's facing straight on to me, and he's laying on his side, and his big melon is just on the other side of this. What mound was a dead moose. So he had killed this moose, and he's been, feeding on it, and now he's sleeping off the goodness.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I got in. Like, I was obviously quiet, but I don't know how I got to that distance. And I figured that he was about 23 yards from me at this point, and I'm kind of standing, feet together, and now I have my bow out, so I'm slowly thinking, okay, what's the best thing to do here? Like, do I back out of here? But you're not going to back out unless you're still, knock an arrow and get ready for whatever's going to shake out here.
Right. You have gun, bear spray?
No, nothing. A bow. And
I got a sharp stick.
So I'm standing with my feet together, and I get my arrow knocked, and I'm just not taking my eyes off this bear, because then I'm watching his chest go up and down, and it's a big bear. You can tell by the size of its head. Now, so it's not as easy to tell when they're laying down, but he had a big head on him, and I was thinking, okay, well, should I shoot him in his, I had a tag, should I shoot him in his bed? But there's nothing to shoot at. It's his head. So I figure, okay, well, at least I have to, if I'm going to try to back out of here, I got to get into a position that I can pull my bow back, and with my feet right together. It's a little bit difficult to draw your bow without, a solid base.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't want to take my eyes off this bear, and I kind of pivot on my left foot, and I look, behind me to make sure I'm not stepping on anything, and it's mossy, and so I take the step back, and I'm still watching this bear, and I snap a branch underneath the moss, and I can hear it just like it was yesterday. And that bear, like, this is why I can't believe I got in on him in the first place, but that bear was just like, boom, and he was like 2 jumps, boof, boof, and he was on top of that moose looking straight at me. Now he's 12 yards. Oh my. And he woke up out of his sleep, so he doesn't know what's going on either. And I'm like, thinking about, should I, do I need toilet paper soon?
Right. Where am I going to get a fresh pair of shorts?
That probably wasn't what I was thinking at the time, but so I draw back, just instinctually just draw back, and 20-yard pin, and he's 12 yards, whatever. So I try to put it underneath his chin and in between his shoulders, and I ended up hitting him right in the shoulder. And as soon as and I can just see the arrow, and it just stops.
Yeah.
And he's just losing his mind, and he looks at the arrow, and he swats at it, and as he does, he turns his other hand and he misses it, or he turns his other paw back and he misses it. And now I will go to ground, and I'm trying to throw another arrow in here, and I'm waiting for this bear to come straight at me, and I'm kind of I realize there's no time to actually get anything off. It's if this bear's on me, it's going to be, maybe he sticks into the end of my arrow, and that's about what I can hope for.
Right.
But, whatever happened, he just turned and spun, and he went up the side of the hill about 50 yards and just stopped there and then stared at me, and, just huffing and popping, and I was like, okay, time to get out of here. So I skated backwards out of there, and yeah, it was the next day I came back, because I knew that I didn't hit him good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the next day I came back, and I got a gun. Actually, I had somebody drive, and I got out to a road and got a gun, and came back the following day after that, and to see if just to see maybe I had killed him. Right. Because I wasn't checking to see how great this shot was.
Right.
Under those circumstances.
Yeah.
And what he had done, I found my arrow, and he had taken that moose, and he had moved the whole moose back into the bush another 150 yards and buried it again. And I found my arrow. And so I was pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
He that bear was clearly not going to. This was not a kill shot by any means, and pretty grateful that he didn't kill me. So.
That you both made it.
So we're we have an understanding, him and I.
Yeah.
That's good. That's intense, man.
Yeah.
Bear stories can get intense, but that's crazy. That's madness. All right, man. Well, I'm gonna. I know we're kind of running short on time, but the last question I'm gonna hit you with is a world stage question. It's a big one. We can get down the rabbit hole, but if you had the world stage for 1 minute and everybody, hey everybody, and the whole world could turn and look at you, what would your message be to the world?
Yeah, that is a big question. Probably the one thing that I would say is, if you have a dream, just go and make it happen.
Yeah.
Just don't let negativity, don't let anything stand in your way. If you're going to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
And do whatever it takes to make that happen. And once you come to that kind of a mindset, there really isn't anything you can't do.
Right.
If that means getting up at 4:30 every morning, and making that part of your life and part of your lifestyle, eating good food. Like there's so many components to going out and seizing the day.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's way more than just if you want it, go and get it. But there is much more to it. But all these things, if you really want it, you'll find that you can achieve it. And I would also say, roundedness. Be well-rounded.
Right.
If you're going to be the best that you can be, you also have to be, if it's hunting, if it's athletics, you also have to be the best husband. You have to be the best father. You have to, you have to do everything in your life right.
Yeah.
To actually be the best that you can be.
Yeah.
And then there's always something more that you can do.
Right.
And don't stop. Just be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fired up right now.
Yeah, that's
Greg, I'm gonna end it right there. You got some final thoughts?
I don't, man. That was a good way to end it. Yeah.
All right, you guys. This is Kenton Claremont and Ryan Claremont with Greg McHale. Thanks for listening. And
if you don't mind, if I could say one thing.
Yep.
Guys, meeting the two of you as in this industry and you're I don't say this about many people. And when I met the two of you guys a year ago, I knew something was right. Like I knew that I'd met two guys that were, different backgrounds, but similar attitudes, and just this zest for life that you don't see. So I really commend both of you guys for what you're doing with the Train to Hunt, and it's a fantastic thing, like athletics and training and pushing and more than anything, more than just necessarily the athletics and training, it's providing people with a venue to try to push themselves and be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I really appreciate the time spent with you guys, and whenever we can get together, it's always great. So I thank you very much.
No, yeah, it's our pleasure. That's my pleasure, Greg. And just feelings mutual. I was telling Ryan
For sure.
after the sheep hunt, or after the pack race, I was like, I just don't meet many guys where like instantly I'm like, man, I'd like to share a campfire with that guy.
Yeah.
And you're one of those guys, and I think that you're one of the rare people that are trying to push the industry in the hunting reputation in the same direction we are. And I look forward to the sheep show every year, just because I know I'll get to come down and be able to hang out with Greg for a little bit. So
thanks, guys.
You bet. And if there's anything that we can do to help out, promote you guys, one last time, let's just talk about where they can find the Yukon Wild, where they can find you.
Yeah, it's the yukonwild.com, Instagram, the Yukon Wild, and that's probably the best, and Facebook, obviously. Those are the best avenues at the moment. But you'll definitely be. I'd love for you kind of to look out for the team come July,
Right.
Sportsman Channel. I'd really appreciate it, and yeah, I look forward to bringing people on a journey that that might push people.
That's right. Well, we're all about
Can't
pushing
wait.
people here, and with that, we're going to sign off. You guys have a great week and train to hunt, baby.